Welcome to Spontaneous Combustion. I'm your host, Aaron Harber, and today we're talking about former World Wrestling Federation champion and current Minnesota Governor Jesse the Big Mouth Ventura. In his highly publicized interview with Playboy magazine, Governor Ventura challenged almost everyone in America with a series of bold and some think stupid statements. Joining me to discuss these statements are Joe Farrell, founder and president of the Farrell Group and JF Images, the person responsible for improving the image of many high-profile Coloradans.
But not Jesse.
Jesse could use her services. John Hickenlooper, president of the Wincoop Brewery on Winecoop, and the man who just took his company private or public. Which one was it?
Private.
Took his company private, so it's a private company. We'll talk about beer later. Don Morris, auditor of the City and County of Denver, and some believe our mayor-in-waiting, though we will not grill him on that subject today. And Gail, and Gail Norton, former Colorado Attorney General, who served as an attorney for the U.S. Department of Interior and the Mountain States Legal Foundation, and currently serves as senior counsel to the law firm of Brownstein, Hyatt, and Farber. Okay, Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura recently spoke out in a Playboy interview on a number of subjects. In fact, I have a copy of that edition right here. I am not encouraging you to go out and buy it. In fact, if we get a close-up of this, I may have to cover parts of the magazine. He also was interviewed by Barbara Walters on ABC's News Magazine 2020 in an attempt to clarify what he said. But no matter what Jesse says, it ends up being controversial. So is it simply a mistake for a high-level official to ever speak his or her mind, or should this be encouraged? Do we want to hear from these people? Is it better if we don't know what they really think? Should Jesse Ventura be applauded for talking straight, or should he be criticized for both what he said and the venue in which he chose to say it? Playboy magazine. Joe, I'm going to toss that to you.
Well, this man got into office because he talked straight to the people that voted for him, which was the majority of the state. But he's also gotten a little hooked on the high of being the center of attention, which I think he was when he was wrestling.
So he's having
and
good,
so he's
still an
going a little overboard.
He's still an entertainer. He's still having
fun. But he's going a little extreme so that he keeps getting quoted. There's some things that are pretty darn extreme in what he did in this interview.
All right, we'll talk about those. Don, what do you think? You're an elected official.
Yeah, I think what he's done, instead of being outspoken, he's ticked everybody off. And, you know, there's two ways you can look at it. You never make everybody happy, we know that. But it seems to me equally idiotic to piss everybody off, and that's what he's done. And I think as an elected official, that's about the worst thing you could do to make anything happen in your state.
A unique accomplishment, it sounds like. Has anyone ever done that?
I'm sure people have, but, you know, like I said, I think the people in Minnesota must be regretting their decision, and I say they deserve what they get.
And I don't think actually a majority elected him. My understanding is he got a plurality. It was a three-way race. So I don't think he even received 50% of the vote, though he got more than anybody else. John, what's your take?
I'm a little more moderate. I think he intended to be incendiary, to get people's attention, to arouse emotions, get people thinking about some of these issues. And my guess is that if you were to look at his opinion polls in that state, they probably haven't gone down at all.
Actually, they have.
Leave it to Gail to check it out. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you. 19 points. He still has over 50% approval rating, so
and
he's still
and the Attorney General is right. They went from 73 down to 54.
Right.
That's correct. So
and see, the issue, though, is you're absolutely right. The question is, even the 50% that have approval rating, how many of those people are registered voters, or are they just people who think they like what they see, but they don't realize, they don't play in the game?
Of democracy.
One of the reasons that Jesse won, though, is he got a lot of people into the system that had not been in the system before. So he really does appeal to people who have been totally out of politics.
Ignored.
I think the public has been starved for somebody who would really speak their mind.
Yeah.
And that's certainly what Jesse does.
And who came to the plate without owing anybody anything. I mean, he didn't have to placate anybody. But this time, I think he's gone a little far.
Well, let's talk about some of the specifics. And there are a half a dozen, or actually there are a lot more issues in the Playboy interview. He's done interviews since where he's added issues
And subtracted.
And he's backtracked. That's right, on a little, not too many. But when you see this guy on Letterman or even with Barbara Walters, he sees himself as an entertainer. Does he see himself as a serious elected official? I mean, what do you think?
He's probably still a wrestler. He sees himself as an entertainer. That's been his way of operating, and it has really served him well so far. I think Joe's right that he wants to keep that up and keep the spotlight on himself. So far, it's working.
He's doing a good job.
Isn't a portion of any politician's role to be an entertainer? I mean, aren't they supposed to entertain to control and get people's attention?
Bill Clinton certainly kept us entertained for a whole year.
But Bill Clinton was always a great
and cost
entertainer.
us a bloody fortune doing it.
He was a great entertainer even in his most serious speeches. He would put in little jokes. He'd bring, he would hold people's attention. I think there's a whole spectrum there, and now Jesse's way over on this side, but I think every good politician needs a certain amount of that.
Yeah, I was really wondering how many politicians would start saying, well, I actually was a pro wrestler myself once. Trying to take that up.
Pink feather boas, didn't I? I mean, why isn't he appearing in the pink feather boa when he goes on all these programs if you want tap dancing and excitement?
I think he wants his cake and to eat it too, probably. So you see him now when he does an interview, he may be incendiary, but he's wearing a coat and tie. He looks pretty formal. Any issue that jumps out at you that he said or that he talked about that you'd like to tackle?
I got the one about the fat people.
Let's talk about fat people.
Can I read the quote?
You may.
I love fat people. Every fat person says it's not their fault that they have gland trouble. You know which gland is the saliva gland? They can't push away from the table. Do you know how many people in the United States got hurt because he said that? I mean, it sounds like, well, they are fat. Yeah. But did you notice Jesse himself's putting on a little bit of a paunch? And what happens when he's about 65 and he's fat? Is he going to retract this statement also?
No, he'll take responsibility for it. I think elsewhere in the article he says he's in the worst physical condition of his adult life. I mean, the guy was a Navy SEAL. He's always prized himself, and he puts himself down for it. I don't think he'll retract it. His whole thing is all about personal responsibility.
And when you look at America, I mean, we are a nation of buffets now. I mean, isn't there some element of truth in terms of what he's saying? We are pigs. We go to the feeding trough and
You
eat.
aren't. You're skinny.
No, I just finished a buffet on Sunday that I ate for 20 people, so I'm as guilty as anyone else. And luckily, the suit covers everything up nicely. But isn't there some element of truth to that? Aren't we a nation that overindulges?
The way he says it, he's hurting people's feelings.
Well,
the same way with the religion issue.
Well, quit being such a wimp, Joe.
Gee.
Come on. All right.
I mean, he certainly does pick ways of saying things that really do alienate people. And I think he has so far generally been able to get away without the consequences that most people would suffer from making people upset. You know, it may have a cumulative effect. He may go a little too far.
He's lost the fat vote.
I doubt
make a note
They're
of
the
that.
wrestling fans. I mean, who are the biggest wrestling fans? They're people that sit around. Oh, now I'm going to get myself in trouble. and drink sit around in the living room and drink beer. Well, that's fine. I didn't say they were bad people. I said they were great people. But they're just a little overweight.
They may be boycotting your food.
Use the word he used. They're fat.
You're ripping out.
They're fat.
Hickenlooper just realized he was talking about his own customers, and he backtracked in 10 seconds.
Well, you got to go with what's his job as governor of a state, and I really believe, how has this affected his ability to govern the state? What do you want in your governor? Do you want somebody to be, just making statements because now we respect this guy, or do you want him to somehow figure a way to make statements, but also he's got to get roads fixed and prisons built and schools funded and all that stuff, and he's got to work with people in his state. So that's why I believe that these kind of comments can do no good. And I don't know. Maybe in Minnesota they're all cheering and the legislatures are happy and he's getting all the bills
Aren't they talking?
passed.
Is he provoking? Isn't that one of the biggest problems in government today? Is no one pays attention, no one cares. They think it's controlled by corporations. He's provoking comment, discussion in neighborhood bars and brew pubs and at the supermarket. People are talking about these issues now. I think that's a major role.
There
in
are a
government.
million programs about being fat on the air already.
one's talking about
This
it.
man is the master of the sound bite.
Yes.
Except he doesn't do sound bites, he eats the whole elephant. And we're into the point where he is hitting religion, he is hitting fat people, it's like he has gotten on a high when he can see his name on the headlines.
No one
whether
else,
it's
no one else
positive
attacks
or-
anything. Everyone else is so
come on.
politically correct that they will touch everything, religion, fat people. They wouldn't dare hurt someone's feelings, which is fine. I mean, as a general way of going through life, I'm all for it. But on occasion, you need to engage the populace.
I think there's a fine line somewhere between not taking yourself too seriously, which Jesse, I think, started out doing, and not taking the issues seriously. You know, you can offend people in what you say, but as long as you're also laughing along with it, that's probably all right. But once you start attacking people, that can really be something that hurts. And most politicians, I think, are really ingrained with filtering out saying anything that might alienate anybody at all. And I think it's good to have somebody who goes beyond that. But again, he may have gone too far.
He definitely wasn't near the line. He was way over. Well, let's talk about some of the specifics. Probably one of the biggest issues that he raised was his accusation that organized religion is a sham. And let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, is that...
Want me to read the quote?
Sure.
Organized religion.
You are the recording secretary.
And I'm expecting extra money for this.
We will double your pay.
Extra money is
I get 2 tacos after we're done, okay? He says, organized religion is a sham and a crutch for the weak-minded people who need strength in numbers. It tells people to go out and stick their noses in other people's business.
Now, how can you disagree with such an objective statement like that?
Somebody else send this to the Pope to tell him he's just a sham and a...
Now, let me ask John.
Crutch.
Okay, John.
Crutch.
Somebody who's willing to incite people to think and, shake them up. And tell me, what benefit does that play in
Good question.
the state of Minnesota?
I think what he's doing there, if you look at the larger context, what he's discussing there was the effect of the church, and specifically, he says organized religion, but he was specifically talking about the right wing of the Republican Party, the religious right, and they were forcing high penalties for people that smoke pot, for prostitutes, for consensual crimes that really didn't hurt anyone. Both sides agreed that they would engage in this act. And I think he went overboard. I'm not going to defend that comment, but I think within the context, the points he's bringing up about the amount of violence we see in our low-income neighborhoods that are a result of these incredible laws that, some kid smoking pot and he doesn't have the money for a good lawyer to get him off, second time, third time, he's going to do 3 years. It's insane.
And let's say that that's true, and that's right. The question now is, how is he going to go from opening his mouth to getting the change in policies? If that's really true and he really believes it, then how does he go from being this person to
Since
getting
that
it
article
done?
came out, we've had, just at the Wynkoop Brewing Company, we've had 24 discussions about legalization of pot and marijuana and drugs and what happens, and should there just be centers, should be taxed heavily but made legal, and should there be centers for people that have addictions, where I hadn't heard anyone talk about it for years.
Then in the trial of Shepard that starts up today of one of his killers, the lawyers are pleading that he was on drugs and so on. So let's just put a little stamp of approval on that kid's forehead who did that terrible thing and send him back out in society to kill somebody else again.
No, I didn't hear anybody propose that.
Yeah, but that's what they're saying, legalize drugs.
That sounds like a extreme right-wing jump of rationality. What do you say?
I'd say irrationality, John, if I were you. But I would never say that myself because I wouldn't want to offend Joe.
And tweak his nose.
But it's okay if you say it.
No, it isn't.
Joe, you ignorant twit.
John, you skinny runt.
I knew I shouldn't have started with her.
We're off of the weight topic. So,
He is skinny.
And what's wrong with being skinny?
Yes, you see, it would bother you if he had, instead of talking
No, it
about
wouldn't
fat
have. No, it
people,
wouldn't have.
he had talked about, you say that now, but the next time he comes
know,
out and
cheers on
play
my
girl,
Gail,
Cheers
before
on my
we leave religion, did you want to
Yes.
wade in quickly on that one?
Well, I think that public officials need to be very cautious about religion. I think our tradition of separation of church and state makes sense, because government, even a governor, should not be telling people what their religion ought to be. And so I think it's territory that, I think that from both sides, it ought to be something where, it's not something that politicians ought to be weighing in too much on either side, too much on the pro-religion side or too much on the anti-religion
Well, I
side.
disagree. I'm with the idea of raising this issue because I think religion is part of politics, and I think it's completely appropriate to raise the issue of what do religious organizations play in politics. Now, how he stated it obviously was offensive, but I'm all for raising that as an issue, and I don't think we should be shy about that. And if you look at the religious right and their influence in the Republican Party in particular, it's a very significant influence, and we shouldn't ignore it. And some consider it a good influence, others aren't as excited. We should talk about those.
But see, the whole point is that what you just said, has this whole era of thoughtfulness, reasonableness.
Thank you, Don. Thank you.
But what he basically said was every organized Jewish person, every organized Catholic, every organized Christian, Baptist, are weak-minded.
All right,
and that's for the weak-minded. So it's the way he said. You're right, but you're demonstrating his weakness.
All right. So how soon will Jesse Ventura face the wrath of God? What's our pool prediction here? Quickly.
When he dies.
All right. Anyone else?
I wouldn't want to be. Well, by that time
I
he'll
think
be
the
formed.
voters may translate the wrath, and we'll see whether eventually this plays out, that it's going to be a long career for him or a very short one.
Okay,
I'm
quick
banking on a
predictions.
short
Quick
one.
predictions. Yes or no? Will Jesse Ventura be re-elected as governor of Minnesota? Yes or no?
I think he's backtracking
Come
already.
on. Yes or no?
I'm going to say no.
No.
Yes, because he's going to start backtracking on everything he said.
John?
I say yes. If he runs for governor, he'd be elected.
Gail?
I say probably yes. Anybody else who comes up against him is going to look very pale and very bland by comparison.
Unless they find another Jesse J.
Well, listen, pale
Yeah.
and bland may be the watchword next time there is a governor's race in Minnesota. Look at the presidential race, where certainly on the Democratic side, pale and bland seem to be the order of the day. Let's talk about, and no offense, Bill Bradley and Al Gore, I love you both. Let's talk about
You're
some
now
of...
backtracking.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, I plead
You're
guilty.
slippery like Jesse.
I plead guilty. What can I say? Legalizing prostitution. I think Ventura had a comment on that too. He thought it's something that should be done. Gail, what do you think?
Oh, I think it's an issue that he's going to have to look into a whole lot more seriously.
I think he's got a lot of personal experience, if you want to know the truth.
I don't know anything
He
about his
admits it.
personal experience. But I think there certainly are some rooms for exploration in a lot of the issues.
I think he's been in all those rooms.
At least he shut the
Gail,
door.
you're not going to get a straight answer out of the guy.
All right, Hickenlooper, what do you think?
Again, I think that his expressing his opinions is valuable, because I think it is an issue that is worthy of attention. Personally, I can't see prostitution ever being legalized in this country.
Really?
I think it'd be hard. I think even in Nevada, there's such a resistance and a kind of a backlash against it.
Don?
As John pointed out, this was a piece of a whole diatribe about legalizing drugs, legalizing prostitution, and doing all that. And I think you run across and into sort of a moral fabric. And is this country ready to sort of make a public statement that our morals, would accept all of this kind of behavior that's, pretty extreme when taken as a whole, especially.
Joe?
I don't think it'll ever be legalized, just because I think I don't think a Jesse could carry that through, and I don't think the rest of the people would trust the voters to put them back in if they did something that radical.
Well, but on Don's point, clearly one of the things Ventura seems to be saying is, let's look at significant public policies that aren't working. The war on drugs, many people from all across the political spectrum say it's a waste of money, it hasn't been successful, let's change what we're doing, let's legalize some of this activity, or let's, at least the users of drugs, let's not put such severe penalties on them. Are those unreasonable positions? I mean, you have people like Milton Friedman from the University of Chicago in support of legalizing certain drugs. Kurt Schmoke, the mayor of Baltimore, a major proponent. I mean, these are reasonable, intelligent people. aren't these viable issues that Ventura is raising?
I think they're issues that deserve to be discussed. I think they're major policy issues, and I don't think the idea should just never be talked about at all. I think there's a big difference between somebody in Jesse's position who really maybe looked to more to implement rather than to just spark controversy. And so I think he's long on the sparking controversy. I don't see any real platform behind these things he's talking about.
I think he's not, part of sparking the controversy is to get it going. I mean, I think the whole drug issue, again, has to be handled gently, but you can see where the establishment really does seem to cling to this, keeping it illegal, keeping them pushed down. In a sense, it is almost class warfare. I mean, the people that suffer because of our drug laws are the poor. It's in the poor neighborhoods where the violence occurs, people are died, we can't protect them, they're shot, there's this huge underground economy. I mean, it is clearly not working. I don't see how anyone can say that it is working, and certainly the levels of violence and the accessory crimes in places like Holland and Denmark, where they are much more accepted, are much lower.
Do the prices go down if it's made legal?
Prices stay the same because they tax the living daylights out of it and use that money for health education to try and deal with addicts and get them off of it.
Treatment programs.
Treatment programs. In other words, by controlling it, they're not condoning it, but they're just saying, you know, just pushing it under the rug isn't doing anybody any good.
So they're not saying the sale is that the drug dealers are going to be all legalized. They're just saying that you're not, if you smoke marijuana, we're not going to throw you in prison for possessing marijuana or owning it. But is that the slippery slope? Are we going to become a nation of druggies if we allow that? Or is Ventura raising viable and important points?
But he's the only one. I hear scientists and so on saying, let's do it this way. But I don't hear politicians, and I don't hear them quoting their people that they represent, saying we want to abolish what we're trying to do with the drug situation.
That's why he's so upset with religion, because he feels that a lot of that's coming from the conservative religious institutions.
But when you blanket a whole nation with, there are a lot of Catholics out there, there are a lot of Protestants, there are a lot of Jewish people. We go to church. And I think I personally, as an Irish Catholic, who happens to go to church every day, there's 24-hour adoration at my church. I stop by on my way home and say goodnight to God. So I'm stupider than hell? I mean,
if you are, Joe, it would be for other reasons.
You and I will talk later.
I was afraid of that.
I think that you step on an awful lot of people's toes. And before, he used to be doing things that were meaningful. Now he's just kind of throwing things out that are kind of wild and controversial, and it sure as heck gets his... I mean, when have you ever bought a Playboy? I've never gone into a store and bought 2 magazines.
And I want to note for the record that I did not buy Playboy magazine.
He asked me to.
That Joe was my mule. Joe was my mule.
Politically correct.
And hold on, this whole discussion is exactly what he's talking about. The very fact that Playboy, you don't want to be seen, you're kind of making these jokes.
Oh, it didn't bother me
Playboy
at all.
is a great magazine. I'm serious. And the display of a naked woman's body, you may like it, you may not like it, but it's not a crime. It's not ruining the fabric of our country. In their interviews, they touch subjects with political leaders, movie stars, whatever.
They certainly touch their subjects. There's no question about that.
We'll play on
Don is an elected official. I mean, what about speaking out like this? I mean,
like I said, I think that you sort of can't go about the business. It's just like the Ross Perot thing. I had big problems with Ross Perot because I spent so many years of my life in the legislature dealing with Republicans, Democrats, anybody else who got elected, but having the give and take of public policy. It's what it's all about. And these people think they can walk in with a magic wand and change, everything because it's so easy to do. You just can't do it. And not because you're a politician, but because the people that you represent, I represent 500,000 people. And I just don't believe that you walk in with a magic wand and say, I'm going to do it this way and be damned with what everybody thinks. I mean, and I'm not saying you hold your finger to the wind, but I don't think you kick their opinions in the face like everybody who goes to church.
But in that article, he was quoted as saying, I am king, when he was asked about being governor, and nobody in the state can tell me what to do. I don't think that's the way our democracy runs.
Well, look, with Jesse Ventura, before he was elected, he was king and no one could tell him
In a
what to
feather
do.
boa, big feather boa.
And he dressed for the part. I mean, you served as an elected official.
Yes.
What's your sense?
Well, I think there are two forces that are running headlong into each other. One of those is the public that just is sick and tired of hearing nothing from politicians except very bland sorts of statements, and people in public office who get very frustrated, as I did, with the sort of soundbite level of discourse. I'd like to hear really thoughtful analyses of issues. I'd like to hear somebody who can really think these things through. That's not what Jesse does. But I give him the right to stand up and be as much of a lightning rod as he'd like to. He serves a function with that. But I don't think it's what we really need. It may be what entertains us for a while, but I don't think that's what America really needs from its leaders.
Any envy on the part of the two of you who are or were elected officials in terms of, here's a guy speaking out? Was this something that you would have enjoyed doing?
I've bitten my tongue a lot of times.
Well, that's true.
I have to admire somebody.
You also, because I've heard you taken positions that are strong and controversial in a way that you felt you were, holding on to your issue. I mean, and I have too. So I don't believe being in elected office for at least this Gail Norton that I know has ever, it's prevented her from maybe talking about being reincarnated as a bra. But it certainly didn't
and
stop
we're running out of time, but I did want to talk about that subject.
There's nothing wrong with him, though. He's a good guy. I think he's just fascinated with seeing his name in lights and his face in lights. And I think it's gone a little to his head, because originally he was strong, he was good, now he's kind of tap dancing too fast.
Oh, I think we're probably seeing the real Jesse Ventura the whole time. That's my guess. That's my guess.
I agree.
Are we going to see anything different? What's your sense in terms of the future? Is this guy going to back off, or are we going to see more of the same?
I think we'll see more incendiation.
Why would he stop now when he's got Playboy?
Well, he's been hammered pretty hard. In fact, I can't remember any politician being hammered nationally the way this guy was attacked.
I don't think it bothers him.
You think he's enjoying it?
I don't think it bothers him. He loves it. He loves the controversy. Why would he say those things if he didn't?
Well, he was backtracking, though, so I think the criticism hurt him. All right, last question then, quickly, is does Jesse Ventura have the same feelings the rest of us? Is he back home crying when he's subject to all this criticism or not?
Oh, I don't think Jesse is a wrestler. This man doesn't cry. He just enjoys the spotlight.
Don?
I think this is just the beginning of some other journey that he's going to just love to do. So yeah, he's playing the fiddle he wanted to play.
I don't think he would cry over something like this. I think he's a tough guy, but I'll bet there are things that he cries over.
Yeah, I think he enjoys speaking his mind. I don't think he's going to quit doing that.
No.
But he is backing down on some of his more extreme statements.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank my guests, Joe Farrell, Don Morris, John Hickenlooper, and Gail Norton for dissecting the Ventura controversy. Join me on our website, www.harbertv.com. See you next week.